I'm guessing you're watching this video and chuckling to yourself and wondering why the hell anyone thought this project needs a video on this topic. The answer is that, like speed humps, Canada Bay is littered with poorly designed and thought out pram ramps. We don't want to see the plethora of basic design mistakes made in the past repeated in the east-west cycleway. The sorts of things we're trying to avoid include ramps with tall lips or drops at the front edge, narrow mouths, steep gradients, ramps that fail to flow properly between the cycleway and the road, and wide gaps in the concrete path. In case you think these things couldn't possibly exist, let's take a tour around Sydney and look at ramps that work and ramps that are failures. We'll start in Oxford Street with a design that works. The angling of the ramp ensures that it flows smoothly from the road onto the path. There is a smooth transition as you ride across it. Note that there is no telltale wham-wham at the tyres hitting projecting concrete during the transition onto the ramp. The next two ramps take us from Oxford Street across to the top of the Burke Street cycleway. Notice how the mouth of each ramp is really wide. These ramps take us to the Rainbow Crossing at the top of Burke Street, where cyclists and pedestrians have priority and drivers have to stop and beg for a green light. Notice how there is plenty of width on both ramps, allowing for cyclists going in opposite directions to use the ramps at the same time, rather than having to queue and wait for a narrow ramp to clear. Next up, we have a series of shared environment intersection treatments, or what are commonly referred to as raised crossings. Watch how easy it is to cross every side street. Closer to home, we've got the Greenway in Haberfield. There are two ramps that can be used when we come off the Greenway here, one straight in front and one at the lights. Note that both are very wide and they transition cleanly onto the road. Here we have a slightly rougher design in the inner west. The ramps are narrow and the transitions are steep and rough, but at least you flow reasonably cleanly from one ramp to the next around the garden. Now what we've got here is the Cooks River Path in Strathfield. And this path coming off here, it flows quite nicely. It comes off at about a 45-degree angle. So you can come off the path here, join the road, sweep around the corner. The worst part though, let's wait for this car. Oh, didn't know we drove on the right. Anyway, have a look at this gap. Although that flows really well, it's about a 2-inch drop off there. That's what we want to avoid in the designs. See how it's built up here? When it's built up here, it should be kind of flat all the way across. This one's a much better design. That middle section there is all level with the road. It's only at the edges that it jumps up. But unfortunately, when you're coming from this direction riding towards it, you've got to come along and angle up onto it. Again, that probably should be cut across there so that you can transition easily, you can flow onto this path. Now, this is an example of terrible path design. You can see you come off the road here, you come up this ramp, and then you've got to come out here and then come back again. There's absolutely no flow here. The flow line really cuts straight across this garden bed here. So why they've decided to put that in there? Well, probably because they wanted a nice even corner for the garden bed. That's the major decision here, rather than making it flow properly. Now obviously this has been put here because there's a cut through the island there, the other side of the road. But the logical thing would have been to have cut this garden bed off here. Might not have looked as pretty, but that would work a lot better. I'm in Powell's Creek in Strathfield, and behind me there you can see the rather infamous Opal Towers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ride that way, going north, no, I don't know which way I'm going, south or something. Behind me is Bicentennial Park. So imagine you've come out here with your family, like over there, and you've gone to Bicentennial Park and you've heard there's a playground over there, and we're going to go for a ride and see what it's like to actually do that. What does the sign say? Strathfield, Botany Bay. Okay. Now, what can I see over there? Ah, there's a beautiful new concrete path. But how do I get across that? I'm here with the kids. And across that, because it's a rather ugly looking curb there. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to ride up, actually not to this first driveway, but the second one up there, and then cut across the road, going through the driveway in front of that red car there, and then loop back down along that footpath and in there. You like bin chickens? I think they're the wrong way around somehow. Little dog's chasing the big dog. But and we've come to the end of the road. What a disastrous bit of infrastructure build out this is. So it's so bad crossing the street, cyclists have got to dismount. Why is that? Well, I don't really understand why, because that's a dead end road, that's a cul-de-sac. There's a park here, all this is a park, and there's only some residential houses up there. So why the heck you have to dismount here? Well, in fact, where are we? That sign there says no entry. So cars can't actually drive through here. They can only come out from the other way. But for some reason, you got to dismount to go on the path over there. Now these ramps are also absolute shockers as well. Very badly built. And here we go, here comes a bike. Now, did you hear the whump whump he made as he came up over that lip? That's because it's too steep. How do I do this? Like that. Instead of being a nice flowing gradient from the road up, it's bam bam. Now you'd think this would be an obvious place to put a raised, what the hell do they call these things? Anyway, to build the road up, so this would be one big lump, a continuous pathway. And you know, we haven't seen a car yet. So anyone driving along here would actually have to give way. So you'd reverse the modality, that this becomes the primary thing, where it's four-way. He doesn't like us much. Okay, as usual I got it wrong. That's a cul-de-sac there, but that's a residential street over here. So obviously traffic can come along here and head down the road here. I guess the residents find it easier to do a U-turn and go out that way than to go down here through this crossing. Now let's go down and have a look at how bad these ramps are. Oh look, this one here, that's an example of a pretty good ramp. That one flows quite nicely. But again, look at it. It flows up onto the path here, but then it dog legs to go up there. Wouldn't it have been more sensible to have put it over there perhaps, so you'd flow straight onto the path? There's another ramp up there. So there's a ramp there, there's a ramp there, both kind of in the wrong spot. Makes no sense. Okay, here we go. I think there's the problem. You know, 50 kilometres an hour is too fast for the street. You'd probably be 30 kilometres or thereabouts. And with a park here like this and a crossing, that would make more sense. Now there's an absolute shocker. So you can see there's a beautiful new piece of concrete here. There's an ancient bit of concrete here. And there's this gap in the middle, which is now sinking
There's probably getting close to an inch on either side, so when you go over that, it's bam, bam. And then that's quite a reasonably steep downgrade there. And this road, you can't really see it, but it's got, from the side on, it's got quite a hump to it. So why this couldn't be built out as a straight across crossing, I don't get it. It's not a great quality road.
I almost stalled and crashed on this bit because I was going too slow when I hit the lip and the ramp. Transitioning between road and cycleway should be nearly silent. If the bike makes a noise as it enters or leaves a ramp, the ramp is badly designed and built. Here we have tight chicanes paired with steep ramps and deep dish cutters. Imagine doing that with several kids in tow and cars coming from both directions. Next comes new path, old path, with the old path making a noisy exit during the transition to the road. Here we get 2 thumps for the price of 1. Notice how much the nose of the bike pitches down and then rapidly up as we hit this gutter. This bridge entry is a classic example of a failure to flow properly. Now you might be asking yourself, what's the big deal with all of this? How can the odd concrete lip or steeper than normal ramp have any impact on cyclists? The answer is that not all cyclists are fit adults charging around in Lycra. That may be the stereotype at the moment, but one reason for building the cycleway is to encourage other groups of people to start cycling. They might not use the cycleway for long distance commuting into the city. They might just want to walk or cycle 1 or 2 kilometres to a local park, library, church, shop, cafe or school. The ramps therefore need to cater for young and old, experienced and inexperienced, and able-bodied and disabled. I said at the start that we have a lot of bad ramps in Canada Bay, so let's look at some examples on Great North Road between Warringah and Five Dock. Now, obviously this is not a separated cycleway, and these ramps were not necessarily designed with the idea of children cycling over them, although they should have been, since it has always been legal for kids to ride on the footpath. These ramps are certainly no better with prams. When the kids were younger, we walked all over the place with either a pram or a stroller, and I know from then that the problems that afflict cyclists today also impact on parents pushing their kids around, or grandparents pushing their grandkids, and it's certainly harder for them. By the time this video was shot, the boys were well used to riding up to Coles to do a bit of shopping, so you are seeing them here after they've had a lot of practice. When we started, it was an absolute shocker. The youngest would get bogged at every road crossing, and that's the best way to describe it. When leaving the path, he'd ride into the rut formed by a steep ramp meeting the roadside drain and come to a screaming halt in what was essentially a ditch. He usually couldn't move forward on his own, so I'd have to ride up alongside him and push him out, and you'll see a few examples of that in this video. The same would often happen when leaving the road. He wouldn't have enough speed or momentum to ram his bike over the drain and then up the ramp, leaving him stalled either in the drain or partway up the ramp, and then he'd often roll backwards. Drains might not look like much to fit adults, but they are deep drainage ditches as far as young kids are concerned. I can tell you that it is extremely stressful to have a kid stalled on the side of the road, knowing that some idiot might come barreling around the corner in their car at any moment. Ramps need to flow smoothly so that there are no ditches or gutters or whatever you want to call them that bring you to an abrupt halt. It also helps, of course, if the gradient of the ramp is as flat as possible. After watching this, you might realise why some of us are so keen on shared environment intersection treatments. It's not about having right of way all the time, it's about making it much easier for less mobile users to get around. We'll finish up with crossing over Barnstaple Road at the corner of Park Avenue. Now watch and learn how difficult this is with kids. Now let's do a quick recap. What we're after with these ramp designs is that they've got to cater for cyclists of all ages and abilities, as well as everyone else of all ages and abilities. So we're, might be old people in wheelchairs or young people in wheelchairs. You might have parents pushing kids in prams. You've got to think about the small wheel sizes of things like mobility scooters and kids' bikes and wheelchairs. So the ramps have to be able to cater for that, not just 29-inch wheels on push bikes or cyclists that can push out 1,000 watts. Secondly, we need good ramp design features, and this has to really be thought through on every single ramp. There's got to be no lips or gaps or drop-offs at the edge of the ramp. Nothing like what we saw in the video where they could be up to 2 inches high. Wide mouths are a really good idea. If you're a parent, you want to be able to come off the ramp next to your kid if need be, especially if you're going onto a road and you need to stop them and start them. There should be flowing designs. It should flow like water. There should be no right angles, etc., that you have to wrench the handlebars from side to side in order to go around corners. Low gradients in the ramps are obviously really useful for people that don't have a lot of muscles in their legs and can't push up a steep ramp. And smooth transitions from ramp to road. So when you, or the other way around, when you come off the road, you don't want to be going thump thump into the gutter and then thump thump as you go up the ramp, because the ramp is not smooth. So as you go from one grade to the next, it needs to be a nice, smooth, flowing transition.